All right, welcome back, everybody. It's Kari, and I am back for week number 4 out of 10-week special series with live guests bringing you their real stories of how they made huge, major life shifts in their lives, and to share their stories of when they perhaps started over again. So I've got a special guest here for week number 4. Let me invite them on in here. Let's see here. Never remember how to do this.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hey, welcome. Okay, we figured it out.
We fought the technology and won. I feel
Yes.
we're done. We're done for the day. All right,
Good. You know what? Actually, I'm just going to call it a week at that one. So.
It's Wednesday. I feel like, close enough. I think that's the goal.
Welcome. Okay, so why don't you just introduce yourself so that we all know who is in the hot seat tonight?
Oh, gosh.
Uh-oh.
I am a labor and employment
there.
specialist, which is kind of a bougie way of saying a job coach. I work for Colorado Department of Labor
Oh,
in
awesome.
Colorado, and I live up in the mountains up here in Carbondale. It's beautiful, but it does snow, and I have mixed feelings about it being from California. So
Okay. Getting used to the snow in Colorado from California.
I mean, I've lived here for like 10 years, so I should be used to it, but there's still a part of me that's like flip-flops are for winter, and that's just
Yeah. Can't relate.
It's strange.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story and being willing to talk about what you went through and basically how your life kind of went in a completely different direction from where you thought it was going. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how in depth we want to go, but like I started out in college. I was a theater major. Like I wanted to do the theater. I wanted to go to like New York or LA and
Ooh.
work backstage and be that person. And that's what I was told over and over again in high school. Like, oh, you just get to college and then you can do all your dream stuff. I'm like, great. Saved up all my dream stuff for college.
Okay.
Then I unfortunately got diagnosed with a medical condition called erythromelalgia, which is chronic pain, and I had to make a decision about how I was going to live my life. And I was at a crossroads where I could have done theater, but I was looking at a very limited, painful life with
Mm.
often lack of access to health insurance,
Ah,
which is key. Or I could
unfortunately, yeah.
completely change directions. I joke all the time that I have 9/10 of a theater degree, so I was like, it wasn't like the
Okay.
first year. I was like deep in it. Um, I just needed like that one stage class, that one dance class. I could have gotten it, but I had to make a decision about how I was going to change my life, and it was really hard. It was not
Wow.
easy.
I'm sure it wasn't. So, yeah, are you willing to share with us what that felt like for you making that decision?
Yeah. At first, I was really angry. I was really mad. Definitely going through those stages of grief. I think sometimes we underestimate when our life like contracts a little bit and our choices go away, how
Hmm.
frustrating that can be. And I was not happy about it. I was very much letting everyone know how not happy I was about it. And very gracefully. But I was really mad, and it took me a while to work through the emotions of of that, of working through the emotions of I'm angry about this. I just wanted somebody else to make the decision for me. I wanted the choice to just be obvious, but there wasn't an obvious choice. It was, here are these two gray
Oh, yeah.
decisions. Choose one. With
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? I think that people can relate to that too, where sometimes life just kind of says, I know you had a plan and you had this idea, but not anymore. But also, I'm not going to tell you what you can do instead. So it
Yeah, like
knocks you off course.
but gives you no direction. They always talk about it opens a window. Sometimes it gives you two very unassuming doors that have you're like, I don't know where these lead, and it's like I'm not going to tell you,
Yeah,
figure it out. Um,
yeah,
which I think is even harder. Like I feel like it's an easier decision if it's like here's a terrible idea and here's a great idea, but I don't feel
yeah.
like life works like that most of the time. It's usually like here's two middle of the road ideas. Have fun. So
Right.
So that was a big process for me to just, I'm like, okay, well, I'm very, very deep into this theater degree, and there's like that sunk cost fallacy where like I'm so deep
Yeah.
in this. I've I'm 9/10 of the way there. I may
Yep.
as well do it. And then it's really hard to convince yourself, okay, I'm 9/10 of the way there. I just need to totally different direction.
Yeah.
Um, so what finally swayed me was getting over the emotion of it and doing a like a list, like basically breaking it down as a list. And once I made the list, going, okay, I've analyzed this to an inch of its life. I now just need
Mm-hmm.
to choose something. I just need
Yeah.
to go with it and just pick a door, and whatever door I go into, I'll figure it out. Like that's how whatever, even though it would be great if I could just know exactly which door is the perfect one. It's like, no, I'll go through it, and then whatever happens, we'll adjust.
Yep.
Um, which was very freeing to let myself do that, because eventually you just have to pick something eventually. You can't stand on the edge and go, like I hope.
Yeah, yeah, and I know people get really frozen sometimes too. Or there is that fear of what if I make the wrong choice? What if um, I have my list and I say, okay, well, I'm going to do this, and what if that doesn't work out? And so they don't do anything. So what are your thoughts about that? Where it's like, you know what, I can
So
overthink this, or
I say to someone who does still overthink it, I'm a work in progress like everybody else, but uh, something that has really stuck with me is that you're not making a bad choice. You're making the best choice with the information that you have.
yeah, yeah,
The only thing that makes it a bad choice is if you continue to do it after you've received new information. Like then, okay, we can have a chat about and we all have all done that. But in the moment, like I think sometimes we're like, I'm going to make the wrong choice. Like, no, you're going to make a choice, and then you will adjust accordingly. Like it's not a
yeah,
bad choice; it is a decision.
yeah,
Um, and I understand that hesitation of like I want to analyze this to death until I figure out the right answer. I love the right answer. I don't think there's anybody that's like I also would like I like the media. I like the right answer. I would like to be correct all the time. Um, so giving myself the limitation of like, all right, we're done. We have to stop and we just have to choose is hard, but it's been really freeing to let myself do that with choices in my life.
yeah. And I think I think that's a great thing to bring out though too, is that it's freeing to make a choice, like it feels kind of counterproductive almost to say, well, I'm going to choose this one thing and that like is going to limit me somehow, but you've just said that it feels freeing to actually have made a choice. So, can you tell me a little bit more about why that was the word choice that you used there? I think it's an interesting word choice.
So like I love analogies. I love an analogy. Imagine like you have to pick a restaurant and it's like the most terrifying thing where like which restaurant do you want? That's all the restaurants in the world or that are within reasonable distance. I hate that question because it's like, oh my gosh, now I have to make a choice between 25 restaurants.
Yeah.
And it's for me the way that I say it's freeing is that that part of it is done. Like you're in the air, like you're gonna land somewhere. Like you can't back out now. And it's like, okay, all right, it eliminates that just feeling stuck, which I
Mm,
think that for me, feeling stuck and makes me sit in that kind of anger of like, I hate that I have to make this choice. Like,
mm,
because you do sort of feel like people are just making you sit there. It's like a teacher, like, you have to choose something.
yeah.
Except it's little goblins in your head that are telling you that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's I mean, man, you're just like spitting all sorts of things here that I'm like, I got to figure out which one do I want to touch on because it's so much good information. But I want to kind of circle back to that major change that you had in your life where you were kind of forced to evaluate what degree you were going to follow up with, what job you were going to do here. So how do you feel, at the time you said you were kind of angry about it, but how do you feel about the way that it's gone for you so far?
Now I feel that I made the right choice. Um, I could have done theater, but I would have been in a lot of pain, and I would
Mm,
have been I wouldn't have been able to do it the way I wanted to do it, which probably would have made me a little bitter boots about stuff. If if I'm being honest about who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Um, so how I feel about it now is that I feel that I've had an incredible amount of growth as a person because it really challenged who I was, which was just kind of that like over planner, like I have a 10-year plan with bullet points. And and it really challenged that and went, oh, that's adorable. All right, let's and it was a big transition, but it has made my life better. I think it's made me a more empathetic person. Like when I see other people having to make these decisions, I'm able
Oh,
to
yeah.
not look at them and go, "Oh, why can't you just make the choice?" I can go, "No, I understand. That sucks. I'm so sorry."
Yeah.
So I think ultimately it's led me to a good place. When I was in it, I did not feel that way, but hindsight is 2020 with that.
Right. Yeah, and I think too for people to hear that message of um, just because it's different doesn't make it bad, and it can bring um, benefits that you never even would have imagined, right? Could you have imagined that you would be saying, well, if I do this, I'm going to learn how to empathize with other people?
No, I was just like, but I'm not going to be a costume designer. Why would I care about empathizing with other people? I could make clothes, but I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I never would have imagined by myself saying that. That was just not who I was at that point, and I was also not in a space to empathize with anybody. I was too in my own head about what was happening to me, and I had no energy for other people's problems.
Yeah.
um, which
Sometimes
I
yeah, you know what? Sometimes we still don't.
sometimes it's healthy to allow yourself that especially when you're really
Yeah.
going through something like we don't have infinite amount of energy and time, and if you're really grieving something, it is okay to have moments where you're just like, I only have energy for this,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to focus on this for a while so that I can eventually come out of it and be able to give energy to other people, and hopefully you have people in your life that can feed into that.
Yeah, and I actually really love that idea too for people who do find themselves in a situation where, they perhaps feel a little bit selfish or something because they aren't reaching out to others. So what are your thoughts about that? Like whenever you're um, when you are kind of stuck in that, I need to focus on me situation.
I think it can feel very guilty. We have this idea of what makes a good friend or a good wife or a good whatever is going on. And it can feel very selfish and very like I'm being so self-centered, I'm being such a drama queen, like this isn't that bad. There are people starving in other countries and I'm complaining about all the choices that I have, you know, but being mindful of like this is something that's really happening to you. It is a real trauma that is happening, and working through it is what's going to be good for you, and it
Yeah.
doesn't make you a bad person that you need the time to be alone to work through it. And anybody that's trying to make you feel guilty about that just hasn't had experience in their lives where they understand that, and
Yeah.
I hope they never have to go through those experiences, but chances are eventually they'll go, oh yeah, I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a challenge though that can happen with people who are looking at making changes in their lives and feeling selfish or feeling bad for themselves and getting caught up. And like you said, we could be making comparisons to other things. And I feel like that is a real thought process that people go through whenever we're about to face something significant in our life. So I want to thank you for bringing that attention to that.
Comparison is a great way to get yourself all wrapped up. It's because you
Yeah.
can do that until the cows come home. You can
Yeah.
compare, oh well, they didn't do it this way, but I'm doing it this. I'm like, you're different humans. You're
Yeah.
different humans in a different space. You can't. It could
Yeah.
really wrap yourself up. I'm not saying that I don't still do that, as though
Right.
I 100% do. I just try to check myself a little
Yeah,
bit.
comparison is a monster, I think. And especially though when we're thinking about our life choices and what we're going to do in our life, and people who are saying, well, I'm going to go this other direction instead, and what are people going to think about that? Um, but ultimately, I mean, your life kind of changed for you. It made that decision for you a little bit, and you ended up in a situation I think you never could have before. So how do you feel in terms of not having control per se over what was going on in your life because this sort of decision was almost made for you? What are your thoughts about that?
I think lack of control is always traumatic in a lot of ways because there's a lot of we all have kind of an illusion of control over our lives until we don't. Like we feel like I got this. I know exactly what route I'm taking to work. I know all the things. Um, how I felt about it was very humbling for me to realize like kind of how little control I had over my life. Like what, I was able to see like how small my control sphere was. And it really helped me focus on improving that. I can improve this little area. I cannot make these other things different. But it was very hard. It did feel a little bit like you're just kind of going with the wind a little bit. You just feel like
Hmm.
you're just kind of moving. But it did really bring into perspective like, oh, I only have control of this much. Awesome. Okay, great. I thought I had this much. It's this much. Cool.
Yeah. But do you feel now like you don't actually have any control over your life? Like how do you feel now? Do you
I do feel like I have more control, but that I understand where the control begins and ends,
mm,
if that makes sense. Like I feel that I have more control because I've taken the time to figure out my condition. I know what my triggers are. I know
mm,
how active I can and can't be. So in that way, it's more control. But I also know like where my control like stops, which gives me a stopping point in terms of overthinking stuff.
mm.
Um, so it's kind of freeing in a way. It's like, okay, I can analyze it up to this point, and then after that, there's too many factors to take into account. And knowing that that's when the decision has to be made versus just sitting in it and trying to figure it out because you're just trying to exercise more control than you actually have.
Yeah. So is it fair to say then that it almost forced you to learn more about yourself? Is that what I heard you say? To kind of,
Yeah, it did. It absolutely forced me to become more self-aware and learn more about myself and really look at who I was and who I wanted to be and
hmm.
go, okay, well, this is what you're working with.
Hmm.
Here's what your limitations are. Here's what you like to do. Have fun. Like it really forced me to be very, very self-aware, um, which is a little terrifying sometimes.
For sure.
It's like I know too much to be great. Like ignorance seems really, really just really relaxing. Like people
Yeah,
that just like they just go through. They just don't know. It
you just
seems
want to
so.
unlearn sometimes.
They seem so happy.
Make me blissfully unaware again.
I mean, ultimately, being aware is great, but there are times where you're like, bliss would be great,
Yeah.
selfishly. But yeah, it did make me be
Yeah.
very self-aware. I had to really analyze what I could and couldn't do, and get very very like down to brass tacks with it. And it's a really hard process, but I think that I've come out of it better and a better person. So
Yeah.
ultimately rewarding.
Yeah. So what would you want to tell people then who are listening and thinking, I've been in a similar situation, or, help, what's a message that you want to send to them right now?
I think the biggest thing is don't take on too much at once,
Mm.
especially especially if it's like a diagnosis and you've just been diagnosed and you're trying to figure out where your limitations are. Sometimes we can try to change everything all at once. Like, okay, I'm gonna get up at 5 a.m. I'm gonna exercise. I'm gonna only
Oh,
eat, kale, and I'm gonna do all of these things. And you do it for about 3 days, and then you realize you can't. Um,
yeah.
but acknowledging like that, hey, if I can just focus on this small thing and make myself 5 to 10% better, like if I just need to be like, for example, with like exercise or feeling healthy with my condition, like exercising and eating healthy foods are great, but I really like cake. So if I can just focus on, all right, I'm just gonna just eat vegetables in lunch and dinner, and I get like 5% better, 2% better, the amount of change it actually has on your life
Hmm.
overall is really huge. And just to be really kind to yourself, like to not beat
Yeah.
yourself up about what you can't do. Like, don't like sitting there and lamenting what you can't do. Like, it's okay to have moments where you're like, this sucks. And that's like, you're allowed to have, like, one of my favorite comedians is a guy named Adam Hills. He's a Australian comedian. He works predominantly in England, and he has a missing foot, and he talks about disability, and he says sometimes, like, most of the time I'm fine. I haven't had a foot forever. It's fine. But sometimes it just sucks. I'm just like, exactly. So allowing yourself space to feel that and then move past it, and to be kind to yourself. Like, you don't have to get over it. Like, it's not a get over it situation. I still have some days where I'm like, oh, it'd be so much easier if I didn't have to focus on this. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
You're allowed to have those moments and be frustrated.
Yeah, and I think that's a great message too, is to share with people that you're gonna have moments like that. I mean, it's part of the human experience that just because maybe you made a change in your life and something shifted for you, it's not always going to be rainbow and sunshines, but that doesn't mean that it's horrible either, right? It's just a moment in our life that we experience, and we are allowed to just be like, yeah, this moment sucks. I don't like this moment.
And that's a totally valid emotion. I think sometimes we're like, oh, you just need to move past it and be happy. It's like, no, I don't need to be happy about it. It still sucks. Like, it's still annoying. I'm allowed to think it's annoying as long as I don't make it the focus of my whole life. Like, I'm allowed to go, oh gosh, we had to plan a vacation, and with my condition, I have to know exactly how far things are and if there's air conditioning. Is that annoying to have to Google the amount of air conditioning that's going to be in places? Sure. I'd infinitely prefer to just go and have to not think about it. So in that moment, I was a little annoyed with my condition, but I got over it. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm very aware of the air conditioning in any other place stuff. Like, if we ever hang out in person and you need to know about air conditioning,
okay.
I will. It's not a very transferable skill, but it's one that I have.
It's one that you have. And I want to say too, though, that going back to your be kind to yourself, I want to say I actually view that as a way that you are being kind to yourself too, and saying, I'm aware that this is something I need to know about a place before I go there in order for me to enjoy this life and get the most out of this life and take care of myself in that way as well. So I think that's
and not suffer. I think sometimes you feel like, oh, well, I'm being an inconvenience, so I should just go and suffer. I should just go and nobody needs to accommodate me at all, and I'll be fine. Like, no, like, you deserve to go and have a good time. And if there's ways that we can make it more pleasant for you that are reasonable, like, who are you martyring for? No one's gonna know.
Yeah.
Like, I need air conditioning. That's what I need.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the message here, right? Is live life your way and live life in a way that feels good for you and that works for you. You don't have to stay and suffer. I think that's such a good message. So I'm glad that you said that exactly. Who are you martyring for? It's such a good one.
No one knows that you're martyring. Like, when I'm sitting here, like, if I'm sitting somewhere and I'm in pain, no other human knows but me, unless I'm like openly weeping or something. Like, all the people are sitting there going, oh yeah, she's suffering for the cause of what? Who is winning? I'm going to be in pain and way less pleasant to hang out with. So no one's winning.
And I think, though, too, just bringing it back is, if you find yourself, if you're someone who's in a situation in your life where you're like, this isn't really working for me, again, whether it's a condition or just the life that you're living in, to not say, I have to continue to suffer in silence here. Like, it's okay for you to speak up and take care of yourself.
And making people aware of what your needs are is really important. It's going to be a process to get people to understand, but the only way that they're going to understand is if you tell them. Like, my dad didn't, like, I also have a major depressive disorder. My dad did not understand anything about mental health. But over the years that I've had it, we have, through great communication, figured out a way to talk about it that he's able to meet my needs, and he's able to talk to me in a way that's really supportive. And if I didn't tell him, he would just continue to communicate in the way he was, not because he was trying to be malicious, but because he was trying to help. In whatever way he was trying. So yeah, just making people, letting people know what your needs are it's good.
That's a great one too. And I mean, how do you feel, though, Was there a time before when you weren't expressing your needs to people?
Absolutely. I wasn't super emotionally effusive. I wasn't able to, at least not in a way that was like authentic. I was able to, go be nice. I was life of the party type of thing, but I would never really tell people how I was feeling or what I was going through because I didn't want to burden them with what was happening. I felt that my
Yeah.
presence um, was going to be problematic or that I was going to bring people down. I didn't want to be like, oh, God, Emily always has a problem. um, so I wasn't telling them and I wasn't being communicative. And then I was subsequently getting disappointed that they weren't giving me the support I needed,
Mm.
even though I wasn't telling them what I needed. And I don't, people have many feelings about if psychics are real, but most people are not psychic.
Yeah, right.
And they're not going to know what you need unless you tell them. So I definitely wasn't. And through this process, I've learned to just be more vocal about what I need. It's still sometimes very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like at work, having to be like, I need these accommodations. Let me fill out the form. Like it's not my favorite, but it does help.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how has life been different for you since you started speaking up?
It's been better in terms of I get the support that I need. I'm able to communicate way better with my family. Like I feel like I have a
Oh, great.
closer relationship with my family because they understand what's going on, even if they can't. Like the communication isn't perfect, but even just the fact that they understand makes me feel better and heard. And I'm able to get accommodations that I need at work. I hated having to do it. I fought it for a few years that I didn't want to do it, but it's great. I get a stand-up desk. I need one.
Oh, great.
so, um, and so I do feel like my life is better because I'm vocalizing what I need, and it's been really hard for me to not feel like selfish or whiny or anything like
Yeah.
that, which it's not really. That's not what it is, but that's what my brain says it is.
Yeah,
But
right.
life is definitely better since I've been able to vocalize my needs.
That's great. And I just want to see if I can draw some connections here. Let me know if you think I'm off base. But it sounds like you had this major change in college with this diagnosis that not only changed your career and all of those sorts of things, but it's ultimately gotten you to this point in your life where you learned some of these skills that, how to just voice what you need and take care of yourself that you might not have ever gotten there if it wasn't for this major kind of change back then. And so, does that sound like a fair connection to maybe draw?
Yeah, I think you don't realize there's a problem until like there's a wrench thrown in. So I don't think
Yeah,
I think I would have just like soldiered on. It was going okay.
yeah,
like like I would have just kept going. I still had these type of issues, but I had a kind of the safety net of like I felt healthy, so I was able to just
yeah,
kind of so I don't think I would be in the same spot. I don't think I would have learned that
yeah.
information about myself until I had to. I definitely am someone that I have to be put in a spot. It's like, okay, you have to learn this now.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of always finding a lesson in things, no matter how crappy the situation seems. Um, but I just think that, it can feel pretty awful in the moment, but I just always like to look on the positive side of what comes out of these sort of situations as part of a way that we can say, okay, I'm diving into this other situation now. I can't see anything positive that's going to come from it.
But there will be eventually, and it really I'm able to tell that to people now when I do job coaching with people that have
Yeah,
gone through similar things to me. It's like I can promise you that it will eventually get better. I cannot give you
yeah,
a timeline. I cannot tell you
yeah,
exactly how it's going to get better. I can tell you that it is going to get better and that you're going to be okay and you're going to
yeah,
figure this out. And I'm here to
yeah,
support you to figure it out.
yeah.
and
And that's all it is, right? Is just telling people that, it does get better, it can get better. We've just got to kind of tough it out sometimes, but if you're in a situation that isn't working for you now,
get out.
yeah,
If it's not working for you, do not torture yourself.
yeah,
Don't, even if you've put in time, effort, like even if it's, oh, I've been in this relationship for this amount of
yeah,
time. Well, in for a penny, in for a pound, I may as well
yeah,
stay. I've been here for a while, or I've done this job for this
yeah,
long. like in terms of like what's happening now with like the Great Resignation, I think about, as you said, about 40% of people have considered leaving their jobs in this
Mm-hmm.
past year. And a lot of it is people going, hey, I don't need to stay here. Like just because I've been here for a while, I don't need
Yeah.
to stay here. And just knowing that you have options. You
Yep.
always have options.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier, that sunk cost theory of we feel like we've been in it. We put so much time, energy, effort, money sometimes that it makes it harder to walk away, but we can always walk away. You can cut ties at any point and say, I'm done. Like there's no there's no reason for, like if it's not working for you right now, you can walk away.
And that does not make you a quitter. I think sometimes people view that as like, oh, I'm quitting.
Oh,
It's like, no, you're making a decision about what you want your life
yep.
to look like. When I went to graduate school, I considered going on for a PhD, but I was again in a mental state where I was really, really depressed and I was really struggling because I was living by myself. So I made the decision to get a terminal master's degree and be done. And I've had people in my life that went, oh, you're quitting. Like, no, I made a decision and this is a good decision for me. Like, it's
Yep.
not quitting. It's like, oh, there's a point where you have to be done.
Yep.
And that is totally okay to
Yep.
have it be done. It's okay. It doesn't feel okay always in the moment, but it is okay, I promise.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, I came into this conversation, I was ready to talk about how your life kind of changed from a professional standpoint, but we got into this conversation here, which I love. I could talk about all day.
Sorry.
No, I love talking about this because I think it's a good conversation to have too around just what happens with us mentally when things are changing in our lives and what's going on and the way that we think through challenges. And I think it's such a good conversation to have. So I do appreciate that you were willing to have that conversation with me. But I want to just kind of, is there anything else though that you would like to just leave people with? And
In terms of like decision making, so I have kind of this practical lens of leaping is what I like to call it. It's this idea of, sometimes we kind of glamorize, you just leap and it's fine like that. And that can work. Like it's worked for some people. For those of us who might have a little anxiety, that probably sounds like the most terrifying thing that you could ever do. But like I kind of broke down what like the decision making process that I did that I found really helpful. Like, like the first step would be being really honest with yourself about who you are and what your limitations are. Like sitting down and having that self-reflection moment.
mm-hmm.
And then asking the question, like, what do I want? Like, what do I want? And limiting it to 1 to 2 things. Like, don't get yourself down
Yeah.
a list of choice. Like, I want these 1, maybe 2 if you're feeling really saucy and you want to have 2 things. Like 1 to 2 things. And then narrowing your choices.
Yeah.
And as much as like we don't like limited choices, our brains like limited choices. It's that kind of it's the restaurant thing where there's too many things to choose from
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of shut down and we
Yep.
never make a decision because like there's 25 restaurants, just pick someone else pick.
Yep.
So narrowing down your choices and then making sure that you're being mindful of when you've analyzed it to the point of like, you can make plans, you can work some stuff out, but acknowledging that there's going to be a point where you can't get any more information and you just have to choose something.
Yep.
And just knowing that no matter what choice you make, it's not a bad choice. You didn't make a wrong
Yeah.
choice. You just made a
Yep.
choice and you will be fine.
Yeah. Nothing else to add. I think that is excellent advice for people who are in that moment where they're trying to decide, should I go after this? Should I make this choice right now? What choice should I make? What's the right and wrong? I think I have this exact same decision-making process.
Well, it's good that we're talking this.
That's right. How to get over decision paralysis. You just need to make smaller choices. It doesn't have to be the whole big thing. Just make smaller choices.
Yeah. You don't have to know you don't have to know everything at once.
That's right.
You can't.
And then just picking something and being okay with it and not saying this is the right or wrong choice, just going with it and seeing what it leads you to, and then, taking what you get out of it.
then you'll have more information and you can make another choice that will maybe better. Like
That's right.
you're only going to get the information if you try it.
That's right.
Like you just have to do it, and which I'm saying this as though that's really easy. It's incredibly hard to do that, and
it is.
If you have people in your life that are experiencing that, being kind to them about about that process, and not being like, I'm sorry, Martha, you need to make a decision.
Yeah, right.
And be kind to people with that.
Yeah. All right. So I want to give you a final chance here. You said you're a job coach. So if you want to pitch yourself or tell anybody to work for you, just I'm going to give you a moment to say that.
Well, I work for the government, so I can't pitch myself. But
okay.
If you're in the state of Colorado, the Workforce Center is a really amazing place to come, and we have locations all over the state. I know a lot of people are looking into getting a new job, so at the Workforce Center, we help people with resumes and all that kind of stuff. So if you're in Colorado, Workforce Center, and Washington State has WorkSource. So that's all I know. Those are all the things.
That's all the stuff. All right, cool.
That's all the things I know. That's like the two things. We're done.
Well, I appreciate you again coming on here and talking to me. I think this was such a good conversation, and I don't want to overload people with too many good things at once. So.
That's probably a good plan.
So we could probably have like another conversation another day about some things, but I think what we talked about today with decision making and I really love the who are you martyring for, so I think I'm going to focus on that one. But I appreciate you so much for coming on here and chatting with me, and yeah, have a good night. I'm always so grateful to hear people's stories and get their thoughts and all of this, and I'm glad that you were willing to share with us. So.
Well, I appreciate you listening. It's nice to be able to tell people about it and not have my family look at me like, oh my God.
No. That's part of why I do this. I want people to hear the stories so that we can normalize this and say it's okay. It's okay to live your life however you're living it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Well, thank you so much. You have a great
All right. Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.